Okay, our third reading is the famous story from Exodus 14, which is the crossing of the Red Sea. And again, we won't read the reading, but we'll just, of course, recall what happens, that the people are enslaved in Egypt. This is the great story of salvation for the Israelites. The people are enslaved in Egypt, and the Pharaoh's treating them poorly, killing their children, manual labor, forced manual labor, all those things. And the Lord comes to Moses in this burning bush, says, I want you to set my people free. The Lord works with Moses. They have this partnership where the Lord performs these miracles, and Moses is just kind of there, and Aaron is Moses' mouthpiece. So it's like this triple thing that's happening. And then what happens? Then the final plague, the Passover lamb, comes into play, and the Lord passes over the houses of the Israelites and kills the firstborn son of man and beast alike of the Egyptians, and then they set them free. Now, while they're on their way into freedom, what happens? The Egyptians change their mind. The Pharaoh changes his mind. He says, we got to get after them. And so the people are being led by a pillar of fire at night and a cloud of smoke during the day. So in other words, the Lord is leading them, and through a visible manifestation of his presence with them, of his protection, his guidance, his care, whatever. And then there's like panic because the Israelites turn around and they see the Egyptians pursuing them, and they start to freak out, and they're like, Moses, what the heck? What are you doing? You led us here, and then what's more, they run into the Red Sea, where it's like, okay, we have nowhere to go. We're stuck here. Why'd you bring us out here? Like, this is one big grave site. What the heck are you doing? And so then Moses is like, don't worry, the Lord's going to take care of us. And the reading begins by saying, the Lord's like, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward. Tell them to go. Tell them to move forward. And so then he says, lift up your staff with your hand outstretched over the sea and split the sea in two. So he's telling Moses to do it. Moses, figure this out. Of course, the Lord's working with him. But then this whole scene takes place where then the pillar of fire that was before them, or the pillar of cloud, moves to the back of them as a source of divine protection. So as long as this pillar is there, the two sides, they don't get any closer because the Egyptians are just like, where did they go? What happened? And then meanwhile, Moses stretches out his staff. The sea splits in two. They walk across on dry land. And as they get across on dry land, the Egyptians then pursue them, and they get drowned in the ocean. So it's this great thing of salvation. In fact, it's known among the Jewish religion to be God's mightiest act of deliverance for Israel. It's his mightiest act. So he split a sea in two. He slaughtered the Egyptians. The Pharaoh is okay. So here's the thing. In the Bible, there's this thing called typology. So I've mentioned this before, I think, in this Bible study, but typology is something that takes place in the Old Testament that points forward to a greater reality in Jesus. Or in some ways, we can look at the life of Jesus, his ministry, his miracles that he performs, and we can look backwards and see a shadow of them in the Old Testament. That's like a foreshadowing type of thing, or typology. Typology is usually the way that it's described. So crossing through the Red Sea to get to freedom, from slavery to freedom, and you cross through the Red Sea, that is a type of baptism. This is what happens for us when we are born into this world. We are born in a state of sin, because this is what we inherit from our parents, Adam and Eve. We're born into this state of sin. We need to come into a state of grace. And how do we enter into a state of grace? But by baptism. So it is through water that we leave the state of sin, the state of slavery, and we enter into a state of freedom of being called the children of God. So it's through water that takes place. Now, we believe that takes place, and we'll actually hear about that from our second reading, which is actually going to be our 8th reading from St. Paul's letter to the Romans. But we can look back to the Old Testament and see a shadow of that in this very scene of the Exodus, the great saving, mighty act of God, who comes to redeem his people. Just as Jesus redeemed his people with the price of his blood, God comes to redeem his people, to save them as though he's like their closest family member. That was the job of the Redeemer. And we'll see this. The Lord is called the Redeemer in our psalm response, which is not really a psalm, but it's the next chapter of this, which is Exodus 15. So it's a remarkable thing that takes place, and it's something that we have to look forward to. So now, if that's the case, then that means the Pharaoh is a type, an image of the devil. And we see this throughout the entire story, how the Pharaoh just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and he gives on the impression that he's open to letting them go. But each step of the way, he's like, no, but you can't bring that group of people, or maybe you can bring that group of people, but you can't bring them, or like he just keeps letting on, and then he suddenly will change his mind of like, nope, not happening. It's there's this wicked tyrant who's inconsistent in the way that he judges. So anyway, then he is drowned in the sea, just like in the waters of baptism, which is our crucifixion, our death with Jesus, and our rising with him. It is through the death and resurrection of Jesus that the devil is defeated. He is conquered, and that happens to us when we are baptized. So the devil is conquered in our lives when we are washed in the waters of baptism. A really beautiful typology that is shown. And so then, as a result of this whole saving mission of God that he performs through Moses, it says, as a result, they feared the Lord and believed in him and in his servant Moses. So as a result of this miraculous saving thing that took place, the people grow in faith in the Lord and they grow in trust of Moses. That's a remarkable thing. So then, like I said, our psalm is really Exodus chapter 15, where the Lord is referred to as the Savior, the Redeemer, the warrior who fights for his people, and ultimately as the King. Like after this moment, we are ready to let the Lord be King, because horse and chariot, those who used to enslave us, he has cast into the sea and drowned them, because he has purchased us. We were slaves, but he has purchased us back so that we can find freedom in him. A really beautiful and mighty act of God. And this, in so many ways, like this is what this night is all about, the Easter Vigil, because it's all about people who have been preparing to be baptized into Christ. At the Easter Vigil, they are baptized in this very liturgy. A really beautiful thing. So this is a really great foreshadowing, a pointing forward, a typology of what is to come in baptism, which ultimately is fulfilled in Jesus and then is brought about as a result of his saving mission for us. Really beautiful thing. So anyway, there we go. We'll look forward to our next session. Peace.